Today, I'm sitting down with filmmaker, author, and my former history of cinema professor, Michael Glover-Smith, to talk about his new film, Hekla. On the surface, Hekla is about an actress who is hustling through the busiest day of her life with 4 auditions, headshots, and a play at night. But underneath that, it's about relationships, identity, creativity, and the way that art can become a mirror for the parts of our lives we're still processing. Michael and I talked about independent filmmaking, working with actors, letting go of control as a director, and the way that his own divorce and creative rebirth shaped the emotional world of this film. And what I love about this conversation is that it's not just about how a movie gets made, it's about how a person changes while making it. So if you've ever tried to make something meaningful out of heartbreak, uncertainty, or a version of yourself you had to let go of, this episode is for you. Is There More is the podcast where creators share how their darkest moments became the breakthroughs that changed everything. We're building a space for raw stories, deep connection, and real hope for everyone who's still writing their story. Brought to you by Dialogue Life Skills, the world's scalable solution to the teen and young adult mental health crisis. I'm your host, Megan A Tully, and I'm listening. So your latest movie, Hekla, is out in the festival circuit right now.
Yes.
And it's doing pretty good. It's won 3 awards I saw so far.
Yeah, we've played, I think, 5 film festivals so far, and have a bunch more coming up, including the LA premiere. We're screening at Dances with Films, which again is like a dream come true.
How are you feeling about all this?
It's been a good year, I cannot lie, because not only do I have this new film out, which is doing pretty well, I also have a book out. And both of those things came out in March. So that was a little it was a little stressful because I kind of wish they had been, 6 months apart, but I didn't really have any control over when the book came out. I signed a contract with a publisher last July. And
Okay.
then also with the film, it's like, we were just kind of at the mercy of whoever wanted to program us. And the world premiere of the film was a festival in Alabama called George Lindsay. And that was a great experience because they flew me down there and put me up in a hotel room. And that's also where I originally met my lead actress 7 years ago. So it was really the most fitting place we could have possibly premiered.
Yeah, it's so full circle.
Yeah.
Were you teaching while you were in production for Hekla, or do you kind of like quit teaching during that time?
I always shoot on my breaks between semesters. So we shot Hekla in August when I was between summer and fall. And that's the way all of my films have been. And that's why it's great to teach, if you're an artist,
Mhm.
because you can you have the time, I think, to devote to your art without detracting from your day job.
That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. And all of my films have been micro-budget films, so, you know, uh, typically we shoot in like, Hekla was a 10-day shooting schedule.
Oh, whoa. I was
Yeah.
gonna ask that. Yeah, like how long did it take?
It was
That's
10 days, but, Relative was only 11 days.
whoa.
So, yeah,
That's
we shoot fast. We do a lot of preparation, we rehearse in advance, and,
mm,
the scripts are always shot listed. And so we know what we're gonna do, when we shoot.
wow. How much rehearsal did you do for Hekla?
We did a fair amount of rehearsal. Some scenes we didn't rehearse at all though, because uh this film had a very long gestation process. Like, I started writing it back in 2016. And it wasn't even about Hekla, it was about another character.
Oh.
And then what happened was, after I made Relative, I got along with the actress Elizabeth Stam so well that I thought, oh, I should take this old script and rewrite it and make it about her character in Relative.
Oh, that's awesome.
So then it became a spinoff. of relative.
Are you stringing all of these together? Like, should we be watching? Should we be doing an all-nighter on Michael Glover Smith's movies? Like, what should
It's a
we be
mul the word you're looking for is multiverse, Megan.
Oh, okay, yes. Is this a multiverse?
They're all kind of connected in a way, but you don't have to have seen, you don't have to have seen any of my previous work to enjoy Hekla. Hekla is the name of a volcano in Iceland.
Okay.
And and I visited Iceland back in 2013, and I love it's one of my favorite places I've ever been. And so when I was looking for the name of a character who was, kind of an unusual person, a free-spirited, young woman, I thought, "Oh, wouldn't that be cool to name her the same thing as this volcano?" And I had no clue at the time that actually is a name in Iceland. It's a female name, and I didn't know that. I thought I was being completely original.
So you discovered the volcanic Hekla in 2013, and then you said you started writing Hekla in 2016. So what happened around 2016 that prompted you to start writing that film?
Well, I made a film called Mercury in Retrograde, which was the first time that I've ever really had a traditional audition process. Because I had made films before then, but Mercury in Retrograde was it was a high budget for me. The budget was almost $100,000. And we shot this movie in southwestern Michigan. So we had to, kind of go there and, put the whole cast and crew up in a hotel and everything. And that was a film about three couples from Chicago who vacation together at a lakeside cabin in Michigan. And the when I say traditional audition process, like this was kind of before self-tapes were even, a common thing. We had a casting director. We held the auditions at a casting agency downtown, and we videotaped all of the auditions. So there were several days where it was like me, the two producers, the casting director were just in a room with a video camera seeing actors one after another, cattle call style. And I was just fascinated by the process. And I really felt a lot of sympathy for the actors because I realized how hard their lives are, that they're doing this over and over and over again, constantly being looked at, constantly being judged,
The left,
constantly being
turn to the right. Okay,
yeah,
shake your hand.
because
Yeah, I did relate to Hekla because I was like, "Oh my god," the amount of, like, yeah. I didn't realize it was all one day at the beginning, and then I was like, "Oh, this makes sense," and it took me
a
back
day
to
in the life.
times, which we don't have in-person auditions anymore, but, um
Right, right.
so it was nice. It was also a bit nostalgic, and I was like, "Oh, this is so fun."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I thought it would be fun to write a script that was about an actor who was just hustling.
Yeah. Absolutely. I loved how you wove together the relationship between Hekla and Tyler to show the actors' inner process of how they create characters. I thought it was really realistic and really good. So, yeah, let's play a trailer so that everybody can kind of see what we're talking about.
Turn your head to light just a little bit for me, please. There you go, dear. Beautiful. Chin down just a little bit.
I'm a girl of action. I like to do first and ask questions later.
I have 4 auditions today, which is like the most I've ever had in one day.
And I have a show later tonight.
Soft smile, dear. That's amazing. That is beautiful. Let's get a really beautiful headshot for your agent here, okay, hon? Wonderful. Eyes right through camera. Right through camera. Little less smile, dear. Little less smile.
The problem is that you're married to your work, so anyone you end up with is going to come second.
Chin up a little bit. Wonderful. Powerful. Remember, you're a queen. You are a queen.
Are you kind of into Amina? Buy me a drink? Absolutely.
Have you had a chance to read the script yet?
I want to use you. I want to use your essence.
Are you kidding?
Wonderful, wonderful. Lean towards me just a little bit. Good.
Empal me in the dunnest smoke from hell.
Thanks so much, Hekla. You'll be hearing from us soon. Either way.
Beautiful. You are beautiful. That's amazing, Hekla. Wonderful. So gorgeous. So gorgeous. There we go. Look at that beautiful map.
Let's try it again, but this time with a little bit more playful knowingness.
Playful knowingness. Got it.
Before we keep going, I just want to say, if you're in LA, you can actually go see Hekla in person at Dances with Films. It's screening Tuesday, June 23rd at 6:30 p.m. at the TCL Chinese Theaters in Hollywood. I'm putting the link in the description below to get your ticket. I will be there. Go support independent film and go see what happens when a filmmaker turns heartbreak, collaboration, and creative uncertainty into a freaking masterpiece. Okay, now back to the show.
There we are.
How do you fund your movies? You said you self-fund most of them. So what is that like?
No, Hekla was an exception. Yeah. So I've done it every way that you can do it. I've crowdfunded, which is really hard. And I don't think I would ever do that again because you can only go to that well so many times.
Yeah.
I've gotten grant money. I've gotten equity investors. Most of my financing has come through, private investors.
Okay.
But with Hekla, it was, I did mostly self-finance it because after Relative, I got divorced and my wife and I sold our condo. And so I had I was able to just take a chunk of that money and sink it into the film.
Interesting. How much of you is in the character Hekla? Because Hekla was also in a relationship that she ended in the beginning of the movie. So was that like a direct correlation to your life or?
I cannot tell a lie. I mean, there's a lot of me in there. And it's funny because when I first, started writing it in 2016, the breakup scene was there in the beginning, the breaking up over breakfast, but there were no flashbacks originally to the relationship. And then over the years, as I started to rewrite it, I thought it would be interesting to show the arc of this relationship that had just ended with flashbacks. And I was still, my wife and I separated in 2024. And I was, continuing to rewrite it right up until, right up through the divorce. So that absolutely, found its way into the film. The film is about the difficulty of being in a relationship when you are a creative person, which is something that I think all artists can relate to. And so that's there. This is also a very personal film for Elizabeth Stam, my lead actress, because she co-wrote it with me. I wrote many drafts before I invited her. She originally was just going to act in it, and we were going to shoot it in 2023, but the money fell through, and I went away from it for about 2 years, and then in the summer of 2025, I realized, okay, I can self-finance this because I have the money to do it, and we can do this, cheaply and quickly. So I asked Liz to write it, with me, and she had never written anything before, but she is honestly the funniest person I've ever known. I mean, she has a very exuberant personality, and because her character is in every scene, that's also something that's very new to me. Like all of my previous films are ensemble casts.
Mm, yeah.
And so this is really a one woman show. And I thought, man, the way that this is really going to work is if Liz feels like she has complete ownership of the character.
Mm.
And the best way for her to do that is to allow her to do whatever she wants. So I said, Liz, do you want to rewrite this? And I'm like, don't feel any pressure, but just print it out, take a pen, and, if there's anything you don't want to say, just cross it out. And if there's anything you want to add, just write it in the margins. And that's exactly what she did. And it was really funny because like she literally did that, with a pen, and then she would take her cell phone and photograph the pages of the script that she had made changes to, and then text me photos of those pages.
Wow.
And so then I went into like the master draft and like incorporated all of her changes.
Wow.
So to answer your question, a lot of myself is in there, but a lot of her is in there as well.
It's like the dream collaboration for an actor, I feel like, to get to also kind of contribute to the script and the dialogue especially, and that's amazing that you let her do that, and it really showed through, it really showed how connected she was to the character, and so I think that's why it was so powerful.
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, and honestly, that grew out of the way I've collaborated with actors over the years because, this is my 5th feature film. And when I was younger, my first and second feature films, I don't think I was that great of a director of actors, even though I wanted to be. I didn't really know how to make actors feel comfortable. And I learned how over time. And I think, now I encourage my actors to bring a lot to the table. And, this was kind of an extension of that. And I really did that a lot on Relative as well. I would say to the actors, I'd be like, I'm not crazy about this dialogue I wrote here. Is there anything you guys want to say or that you think would make this better? And, of course, they got excited about doing that. And so having Liz rewrite it was kind of, the logical extension of that.
Yeah. What are like the top 3 things you learned over the years as a director in order to make actors feel more comfortable, besides letting them rewrite lines of the script?
Ooh, that's a good question. God, I have to name 3.
3.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, I have asked actors what previous experiences they've had that were positive for them. And, like I talked to Wendy Roby, who plays the mom in Relative. She was on the show Twin Peaks. And so she was directed by David Lynch. And, I would ask her about what it was like to work with David Lynch. And, she would tell me things that he did on set that were, positive for her. And and then I would just like turn around and do that on the set of Relative.
That's
you know?
genius, honestly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll tell you something. There's an episode of Twin Peaks, not directed by him, but directed by Mark Frost, the co-creator of the show, where she had to cry, and he told her to listen to a song that always makes her cry. And he said, he goes, just go over there, listen to the music, take all the time you need. And then I did that, not with her, but with another actress, Emily Lape, at the end. I was like, Emily, just listen to a song that you think is really sad, that always makes you cry, and just take as much time as you need. And when you're ready, you tell us, and then we'll be ready to go. But, and that worked beautifully. It was like she just sat there for several minutes with her earbuds in. And then when she was ready, she looked at us and she said, I'm ready. So we just went.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that was one thing. I love to rehearse. I mean, as I said, some scenes in Hekla we rehearsed a lot in advance. And then other scenes we didn't rehearse at all. Because Liz and I trust each other completely. Like, this movie could have never happened if I wasn't good friends with the lead actress. And that was kind of a new experience for me. Most of the time I'm working with people that I either have never worked with before, or if I worked with them before, it was only in, the context of, knowing them professionally. But Liz and I became friends. I mean, I was at her 30th birthday party. I roasted her on her birthday. I'm friends with her husband, and I kind of met him through her. They started dating like around the time we were making Relative. And then she knew my ex-wife. She kind of saw me get divorced.
Wow.
We've kind of been there through all of these milestones in each other's lives. And the rehearsal process with her was great because I knew she was going to play the part. So it was like the other actors that we cast, I had them read with Liz. So that's where the rehearsal process began. It's like, I had her read with multiple Tylers. I had her read with multiple Aminas. And then after those parts had been cast, then we rehearsed some of those scenes in person. But then, like the scene where she's auditioning for the experimental play, and she does a couple monologues in that scene. One of which is she's kind of summarizing this story called The Blue Eye by a French writer named Apollinaire. I never saw her read that until she was on set, and the camera was rolling, because it's a very long monologue. And I actually told her, that she could just feel free to summarize the content of that monologue. And much to my surprise, she didn't summarize it in her own words. She read the script. And afterwards she said, it was so well written. I just wanted to read the words that you had written. So
Yeah.
that was kind of a nice surprise. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah.
that's should give you some insight into how I collaborated with her. And I never once was worried about her doing something that would be, not what I wanted.
Mm.
Like, I knew her so well. I knew that when the camera was rolling, she was going to be perfect, and she was.
Okay, so if I got that, you think as a director, you learn to ask what other great directors do that makes their actors comfortable, and you kinda
Yes,
implemented that. Rehearsal, if the actors want to, and you don't need to rehearse if the actors
if they
don't.
don't want to.
Yeah, so kinda leaving that up to them. And
Yeah,
then big one also, which this is interesting, was you took the time to build a relationship outside of the, I guess, professional collaboration, and that's what built the trust, and you guys were able to really trust each other, and you don't think the film would have basically gone as it did if you hadn't had that, like, long-term kind of foundational relationship.
absolutely. I should also point out, after Relative came out, we were creating TikToks. There was a Relative TikTok account because my executive producer, now, Megan, I'm too old to, have TikTok, but my executive producer on Relative was like, my friends in Silicon Valley are telling me that TikTok is the best social space for this film. So I had the two young actors, Liz and this guy, Cameron. I came up with the idea. I was like, Cameron was living in New Mexico. I was like, what if you two do TikTok videos in character? And it's like you're communicating with each other through video letters.
That's so cool.
I was like, that could be a cool way to promote the movie. And it did work. I mean, like, people were watching these videos, but and then we stopped doing it because Cameron was just too lazy, I think. He didn't he the only way he was willing to do it would be if he actually wrote a script and turned it into like an actual film production.
Yeah.
Whereas Liz was much more willing to just kind of do it by the seat of her pants. But that was really the origin of Hekla, if you want to get real, is, I would meet her. I would say, Liz, meet me at the Music Box Theater. I have an idea for a TikTok we can do. And she would meet me at the theater. And because she would be doing it on my phone, I would hand her my phone and I'd be like, pretend like you just came out of a movie and you're recommending this movie to Benji, your boyfriend. That's what she would do. And I would tell her what to say, but then she would completely put it in her own words. Like I would say, Benji, I just saw this movie, Crimes of the Future. It was disgusting. You have to see it. you know, um, and she would do that, but instead of saying, "Hey, Benji," she would go, "Hey, Schnookums." And I was like, I know, and I was laughing my ass off because I would have never written Schnookums, but
Right.
she would say that. So that's what really gave me the idea to do Hekla. I was like, oh, yeah, she should know the character of Hekla better than I do. Like
Yeah.
she should be telling me who Hekla is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was I'll tell you something else, Megan. This is crazy. 2 of those 10 days of shooting Hekla, the first 2 days, I was not there. Literally.
What do
I
you
hired I hired a second unit director. So all of the fantasy sequences were done with the second unit. I was not there. Like the douche commercial with the rifle, I was not there.
That was
That was
so good.
Yeah, it's
Wait,
so good.
why were you not there? You just couldn't be there, or like you didn't want to be there?
No, I could have been there, but I thought if Liz plays Hekla for 2 days and does all these fantasy scenes before I show up, that's the best way for her to show me who the character is. She's gonna feel like she's the co-creator of this movie. So I basically was like, I told her, come up with an idea for what can be going on in Hekla's brain during each audition. Like, take us into her inner world. And like, I knew it was going to be in color to contrast with the black and white of the rest of the film. And it wasn't just Liz, it was the production designer, a woman named Heather Kuhlman. And then it was our hair and makeup artist, a woman named Heather Vogt. Like, it was the 3 of them cooked up those scenes. And I thought, if I don't like what they do, I can just not include it.
Yeah. Well,
and
they,
then
they,
when I saw those scenes, I was like, this looks amazing and I'm going to use all of it. And I did.
I love that. And it also gave it, I mean, your films typically have a sort of feminine quality to them, which is amazing. But I think I love that you told me that because I didn't know that. But those scenes did have such a different kind of vibe to
Yeah.
them. And she
Yeah.
was able to kind of really tap into like her wild feminine energy. So it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense that you're just like, go girls, like I'm gonna stay out of this one. And
Yeah.
the hair and makeup was incredible. It really brought her to life, and she was really like in her sort of like wild feminine power during those scenes. So that's a crazy idea, and so cool that you were like, let me just step back, because I feel like a lot of probably directors would never do such a thing.
Well, again, I think that just comes with experience. I mean, this is my 5th time doing it. And I think, honestly, my work is at its best when I give up control. I think that a director's job is to hire the right people and then kind of get out of the way. It's like I tell people what I want to do, I tell people what I'm trying to express, what the reason is why we're making the movie. Those conversations happen early on. And then, if I hire someone, it's because I respect them as an artist and I want them to express themselves in terms of how they want to put across the ideas that I tell them about in the very beginning. And so it takes a certain amount of confidence, I think, to just like step back and say, what do you guys want to do? Do whatever you want to do. And, yeah, I think that wild feminine energy you're talking about, like it wouldn't be there in the same way if I had been there. Like on the set with the douche commercial, she is literally, I mean, it's a set with a giant vagina painted behind her. I would have never thought to do that.
Right.
I would have never told my production designer to paint that as a backdrop. She just did it. And when I saw it, I just thought it was hilarious and amazing.
It definitely was. If you're new here, hi, I'm Megan. I'm an actor and filmmaker from St. Louis, Missouri, turned content creator, and I hope you're enjoying the show so far. So if you are, give it a like, please subscribe to the channel, and thank you for listening. Okay, now back to the show. Okay, so during the process of making Hekla, or any of your movies for that matter, but I guess specifically Hekla since that's kind of the newest one, you explored the topic of not being able to kind of reconcile being in a successful relationship while also being a creative person. Have you made amends with that? Have you been able to kind of figure that out at all ever in life?
Boy, that's a good question. That's a good question. I've never been asked that before. I think the reason why Hekla turned out the way that it did is because I was trying to make sense of my own life. And I felt like it was difficult for me to strike a balance between my personal life and my professional life. So, but without, so I was trying to understand myself better, I think, through making this film. And also, to understand my partner as well. I think what was difficult for me about getting divorced was realizing that, when you're in a relationship for a long time, and I was with my now ex-wife for 17 years. That's a long time.
That's a long time, yeah.
Your identity, a big part of your identity is as the spouse of your partner. And so, in a way, it's like I was, the husband of this one person. And then I was also a filmmaker. And, because she was not part of that world, it was like I had two identities.
Yeah, huh.
And so, they weren't fully integrated. And then through the process of getting divorced, I mean, that was a really, difficult time because, first of all, it's like your identity as the spouse dies. It's like, you have to, in a way, be reborn because all of a sudden you're not living under the same roof as this person. And by the way, my divorce was amicable. It was my idea, but there was no sort of big drama. There was no one reason why it fell apart. It wasn't like there was no infidelity. There was no, there weren't even any really big fights. It was like we just kind of drifted apart over time because I think we were so different and because I was an artist and, she was not. So, when I found myself alone, it was like I had to rethink who I was, and I had to fill up my time with doing other things. And that's, and of course I became much more prolific. I wrote most of my book and I made a movie in that first year that I was alone.
That's amazing. And I feel like a lot of people don't take it and make it into something like transform it into something positive. Probably a lot of people just go to the bars and,
Yeah.
black out for like at least 2 years. So good.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, it's I can't believe that I'm even talking about this. This is so funny, but I because I'm only used to talking about the movie. and what the movie means on the level of themes and ideas. But it's kind of a cliche to say that you have to love yourself before anyone else can love you, but it's true, and I think you really become cognizant of that after a relationship is over and you find yourself alone, because it's like you're not responsible to another person. You have more free time, and then all of a sudden you realize you're responsible for everything that you do. It's like just on a practical level, like I'm responsible for everything I eat. I'm responsible for creating the schedule of my life. And how do I do things that are going to feed my soul? How do I establish a new routine? When do I exercise? When do I when do I read? When do I um so the year after I got divorced was me trying to figure out how to exist in the world as a newly single person. And I got a new apartment, I got a studio, and I was like living alone. And I was working more, as an artist. I was more prolific, but it wasn't like I was trying to um it wasn't like I was like trying to fill up my time. I just had more time.
Mhm.
And I had more free time that I was able to use to pursue, creative things.
Yeah.
So all of that is in the movie. I mean, that's all in there, and I think it's especially in there through the flashbacks. Because in those flashbacks, what you see is the arc of an entire relationship. From It's like when Tyler and Hekla break up in the beginning, Tyler is at her lowest point because she kind of knows that Hekla's no longer interested in her. And then the next time we see Tyler, she's at her highest point because it's the night they meet at a party, and it's very romantic. It's magical. And then each time we see them after that, it gets worse and worse until at the end you realize how they ended up where we saw them at the beginning.
Yeah. And it is really like that's kind of what I guess made you it was pulled at your heartstrings, right? Because everybody's been in a relationship and everybody's probably lost a relationship with that was going really good at one point and then turned into something else because both people probably I think in relationships a lot we kind of like put on a front of who we are probably
Yes.
first, I don't know, year, 2 years or until something happens where everybody realizes, "Oh, you're lying to me," or like, "Oh, you're just being who I want so you won't leave me or you're gonna like me," or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that happens, like, really often in relationships, and so it was just so relatable, um, to watch, and it was like it made me think back on relationships I've had that's like, "Oh, yeah, it was so good," and then, you jump into it, and then years down the road, you're like, "Who even are you, and who am I, and why are we here?
Yeah.
How did
Yeah.
we get here?" But you do think back and remember, "Oh, because remember this and you justify, like, trying to stay together, but yeah, that's crazy. Now that you're divorced, would you ever get married again? Or are you kind of, like, against that whole thing now?
I don't know if I would or not. I mean, I am in a relationship now, but it's an ethically non-monogamous relationship.
Nice.
And that's good for me because I feel like and it's my new partner is the one who's kind of introduced me to
Mm.
this style of relationship. Um and it's good because it's the opposite of of what I had before. So I would never say never. It could happen again, but um who knows?
Like, what would you do differently, I guess?
Oh boy, what would I do differently? I don't know if I would do anything differently. I think the truth, because like I said, I don't think that any big mistakes were made. I just think that not every relationship is meant to last forever. My marriage it was a it was a good relationship for many years. But then somehow over time, it's the kind of thing where I didn't realize how much we had grown apart until I looked back and thought, how did we end up here? And again, that's what you see in the film. And we did all sorts of like little subtle things in the film, like, the second flashback with Tyler and Hekla is when they dance together, when Tyler shows Hekla the no paper towels dance, which is a positive scene.
That's
It's a,
a cool dance.
yeah, they're clearly still getting along, but at the beginning, Hekla is reading a book
Yeah.
and she's reading the story, The Blue Eye by Apollinaire, which is of course what she's using in the audition. But when Tyler first walks up, she says, "Hey, I invented a new dance today." And Hekla doesn't look up right away. Her nose is in the book and she goes, "Oh yeah?" So she responds without looking.
Mhm.
And that is how the honeymoon phase is over. And then later, the final two flashbacks are both at the dinner table. And in the second to last flashback, they're sitting close to each other at the dinner table. And then in the final one, they're at opposite ends of the table.
Yeah.
So, so I don't think I would do anything differently because I don't think either of us were really in the wrong. I just think we were always different and we just grew apart. And that's what I was trying to show in the film. And I was trying to extend sympathy to both characters.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed that. Something I learned, I've been studying relationship therapy over the past, I guess 3 years, and when you talk about Hekla reading the book and Tyler saying, "Hey, I just made up this new dance move," and Hekla just being like, "Oh, cool," like, still looking down.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned that I feel like nobody knows is that, we're all in our own movies. We all are having our own movies and we're in our own little worlds. And so if somebody interrupts us, it feels like an interruption of our movie, just like
Yeah.
humans. And so you're supposed to ask, like, it's like a healthy relationship technique to ask, like, hey, is now a good time to talk about this? Or, hey, is now a good time? Right. And then
Yeah.
you can say like, "Oh, yeah, it is," or, "Oh, no, I'm reading a book. Can we do it in an hour?" Right? And that eliminates 50% of all conflict in relationships. Just asking,
Right.
"Is now a
Is
good
now a good time?
Yeah, is now a good time?" And
Yeah.
then if it's not, the person can say, "No, it's not," but they
Right.
have to schedule a good time in the future. So while you portrayed this relationship getting away, from from each other so well, it was so real of what really happens. I just wonder and kind of hope if we can show, which you'll be able to answer this for me, but maybe show some different ways of relating to each other in movies that actually bridge conflict. And a lot of people say, well, no, you can't because movies are about conflict. Like it's all about creating conflict because that's what drives the plot. But you still have conflict, you just have a tool to get through it. So what do you think
Mhm.
about, like, if characters were, like, emotionally intelligent and knew how to be in a successful relationship and there was still conflict, but they had tools to get through it? Do you think that would make for a, like, I don't know, still an interesting movie, or would it just be too, like, kind of not enough conflict to be, like, a good plot?
Mm. I think that absolutely could work. But I'm also reminded of something that one of my favorite directors, Fassbender, said. He said, movies should have an unhappy ending so that life can have a happy ending.
Oh, whoa.
And his movies are full of people just being terrible to one another. And yet, I think I know what he's talking about, because he always shows oppression. You know, he was like a Marxist, and he always shows how people abuse each other and use each other and exploit each other. And oftentimes in the name of love, you know, and I think sometimes not providing the answer is the best way to get the viewer to think about their own lives. Because if the film does have a happy ending and everything is tied up, and the characters do work through the problem, I think it's easier to not think about it afterwards, because you're like, oh, the characters on screen solved the problem. I don't need to solve the problem in my own reality. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's an interesting take. I would have never thought about that, but that's interesting because, like, I guess one of the main reasons to watch a movie or to make a movie is to get people to think about their own lives and have like a reflection of themselves and their emotional world. Um,
Well, Megan, I want to send you a link to a short film I made called Paper Planes. This was the first film I made after Relative, and it's the only one I didn't write, but it's about a woman who has agoraphobia,
okay.
and how she develops a relationship with a woman who's staying at an Airbnb across the hall.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, it's kind of a rom-com, and it's set during the holidays, and my friend Alyssa wrote it. And that was a really interesting sort of process of collaborating with someone else who wrote the script. But what I think she was very good at in the screenplay was sort of planting seeds without showing them come to fruition. And I think this relates to what you were talking about, because you're talking about having characters who are emotionally intelligent, who have the tools to solve the conflict between them. I think it's best if things aren't completely solved. I think it's best to suggest how it might be done.
Nice.
And then, you know, in a way, have the viewer complete that journey in their minds.
Nice.
That's, to me, what cinema that's what cinema does at its best, is it kind of incites you as a viewer to collaborate on the meaning. You know, I think if the characters, the danger in what you're saying is if the characters are too emotionally intelligent, then it would almost turn into a lecture to the audience of like, this is, you know, this is what you should do. This is how you can solve your problems.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a fine line that you would have to.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
reminds me of like, I don't know, do you watch Euphoria? Probably not.
I've never seen it.
Okay, well, you can probably think of a example of a movie you know that does this really well, but a lot of times, like, in movies or shows, and Euphoria season 2 did it really well, where, like, they would have a, what is it? It's not a flashback, but it's like a little mini interstitial thing where, like, something happens that's crazy negative, like, somebody, like, kills the person that they're actually just about to yell at, and then it, like, goes back to the present moment. Is there a name for
Oh,
that?
so it's not like a flashback, but it's almost like like a fantasy.
Yeah, it's like a little fantasy, and then it just goes back to where we're at. And
Yeah.
so, like, I've seen that done in the negative really well, where it's like, "Oh, I wanna punch this person in the face," so they punch them, and then they're like, "Oh, just kidding, we didn't punch him," you know? Uh,
Yeah.
but
I
I'm
would
wondering if
I would call that a fantasy cutaway.
cutaway, nice, yeah, there it
Yeah.
is. A fantasy cutaway. I wonder if there could be a positive version of that, where it's like what you're kind of saying, like, kind of show what they would do, but then go back and they can't do it because I don't know, they don't have the courage to do it or something. I don't know, it just came to my brain of how you could maybe show it without completing it or without actually making it true, perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't know, something to explore.
Yeah. Well, in a way, we do that in Hekla with those fantasy scenes because, every time it cuts like the douche commercial with the rifle, every time I want to show that she's kind of in the zone as an actor. It's like those cutaways only happen when she's doing well. The
True, true. Yeah,
yeah. So
but we cut away to the Tyler scene when she's doing an emotional thing, which I didn't realize it was bad. Is she doing bad when we cut away to Tyler or no?
she's not doing bad. It's just that that's what she's using.
That's what I thought, yeah. So
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
she's using that sort of like the pain, and then when we cut away to the, kinda idealized version of her or her fantasy self, she's in that sort of, um one of my friends said this in an acting class once. She was like, "You just need to have, like, a raging ego before you go on, on stage," and part of it is just, like, really having this image in your mind of yourself in, like, a higher state or something. So
Yeah.
I think you guys really nailed that too because and I've never seen it personified, I don't think, but in my head, it's definitely, like it's a thing. So I was like, "Wow, this is, like" I bet actors love this movie.
They do. In fact, a lot of young actors love it, and then a lot of older actors who've seen it have said, "Oh man, I'm glad my life isn't like that anymore." They're like, "I remember back when I was doing 4 auditions a day, and uh, yeah, I'm glad I don't have to do that." But I also think it connects with people who are not artists because even if you're not an artist everybody has that conflict between like your work life and your home life. I mean, that's a common um that's a common conflict, I think. So no matter what you do in life, like we've all, been through bad breakups and then had to go to work. And you don't want to think about maybe the relationship that just ended, but you have to because the memories keep bubbling up. Maybe you're, a business person and you're giving a presentation, in a boardroom or something. Um, but, that's still what's rattling around in your subconscious.
This is awesome. I feel like I could talk about this with you all day.
I
Just, like,
know.
getting ideas, because you give me so many ideas, like, from
Wait,
a
I
write
want to say I want to say something else too.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? Like I've done so many interviews for this film, and I've said so many things to you that I've never told anyone.
Wow.
Because you're asking questions that are not the typical film critic questions.
I know, and I knew you would be ready for the typical film interview, which is why I kind of, like, let us go there first, but I was like,
Yeah,
"Not what this is about," because that's why I wanted to watch the movie too, because I always when I watch things and when I study directors or even musicians or, music artists, I look into their lives
yeah,
to understand their connection to their art, and one of the things I always do too, before I even read a script, like, as an actor, I research the writer and
yeah,
kind of find out who the writer is, and
right.
and I think yeah, I hope and I know, yeah, your super fans, cult following, network, and across the world probably now would probably be interested in who is Michael, right?
Right,
Behind the movies. So
right.
so yeah, I was hoping to go a little deeper into your connection to the work and how it relates to your personal life for sure.
Well, let me just tell you something else that I've never told anyone. The opening credit sequence was very important to me that she be jogging. I've never talked about this, but to me, that was, athletes frequently talk about, being in the zone. And that's what she's doing. She's getting into the zone first by pushing herself physically. to a place where she's, you know, in a different headspace. And then later on, when she's acting, she's kind of doing the same thing. And the song that plays over the opening credits is called Frequency, by my friend Trev Gibb. And then later you hear a remix of that song when she goes into the bathroom to change. And
cool.
that
The
is
music, the music is so good, by the way.
I know Trev is incredible. He lives in Newcastle, England, and I've never met him in real life. We communicate only online, and he's amazing. But yeah, I wanted the fact that the song comes back when she goes into the bathroom to change, when she ties the tie. She like watches a YouTube video in order to figure out how to tie a tie, and then literally, you know, puts on lipstick, puts pins on her coat, does her nails. You know, and you're hearing the same song, so it's like she's in the same, you know, frame of mind, basically.
Nice.
It's meant to be a mirror of the opening scene.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, I know. I typically, you know, it was a long opening credits, and I was sitting there looking, and I was like, man, this is so, like, you know, it's long, but I was like, but I just can't stop watching because she's running, and then she's on this side of the picture, and now she's on this side of the picture, and you know, I'm looking at all the decisions you're making, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then it relates to her character because she's literally running kind of like away from her feelings, I'd say, but she's just busy. She's hustling in what she wants to do in life.
Well, again, that could not be more personal because, Megan, I walk 5 miles every day.
Nice.
And I started doing it during the pandemic. I started walking like 2.5 miles from my home to a certain point and then turning around and walking back home. And part of the reason why I started doing it was just to get exercise. But I also, there's a meditative quality to it, you know, where I do feel like I get into a zone where, you know, it's kind of hard to, the things that, you know, you normally worry about, sort of disappear when you're exerting yourself physically.
Oh yeah.
And that's, you know, that opening sequence of the film would not have happened that way if not for my 5-mile walks.
I love that. And it reminded me too of, I used to obviously live in Chicago during college, and I used to run up and down the lake. Probably I was crazy, so I ran like 8 miles every
wow.
get up in the morning, smoke a cigarette. 8 miles. I got hospitalized, so it was not pretty, but I also had an eating disorder at the time, so I eventually went to the hospital, and they were like, you should have been dead a month ago. You need a blood transfusion. You don't have any oxygen in your brain. How the hell are you even walking?
Wow.
And I was like, bro, I run 8 miles a day. What the f are you talking about? Like, I was just like, I had no chill. So I definitely, it took me back to that. But yeah, now I just walk. I do walk. And I do find, yeah, I get downloads when I'm walking or in the shower. I have to be in water or in motion. And then I get my whatever downloads I need, you know? And so that's a great tip though for people, because yeah, you do have to sometimes do something physical to get in any kind of zone of just no mind.
Right. Like, it's good exercise, but it's also, I don't know, it's therapeutic to walk.
Yes.
For me. And I recommend it to everybody. I'm like, it just, if you walk every day, it will improve your life.
Yeah. And you can do stuff on your phone. You know, you can get emails done. You can like work on the phone. But like
you can listen to podcasts.
Not sitting on the couch, just like go walk.
You can listen to Is There More with Megan Tully.
There we go. Love it. Thank you guys for watching another episode of Is There More? If you like this video, if it did something for you, send it to a friend and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. That was Michael Glover Smith. I'm your host, Megan A Tully, and this has been Is There More? Thanks for listening.